Terry, thank you for giving me your thoughts and opinions this evening. We're at a migrant hotel protest outside the Britannia Hotel here in central Bournemouth. We're about a month in now. We've been doing this every single weekend. Lots of people here, but we've taken a nice shady spot behind the scenes, backstage so to speak, where you can sit down and in the shade and gather your thoughts. Terry, how do you think it's going this evening? What do you think of the atmosphere this evening?
The atmosphere is interesting because people in both groups, both the pro-immigrant and the anti-illegal immigrant, seem very boisterous and happy in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I would say from that point of view, there's a good atmosphere. The sad thing is that neither group is sat down talking to each other and talking out their differences.
Do you think it's possible that they can come to more understanding, that there can be any dialogue, or do you think the situation's too far gone and too toxic, Terry?
Difficult one. I think there are potentially people on both sides who could talk to each other. Unfortunately, the other week I spoke to somebody who opposes the Patriot movement and asked them what they would say to Dolores Roberts, a friend of mine, whose son Tommy Roberts was murdered by an Afghan migrant. And their attitude was, well, people get murdered all the time. I then said, well, what would you say to the woman and her family, where the woman was actually, I believe, a young teenager, was raped in the toilets down by Bournemouth Beach by a group of migrants. And his attitude was, well, people get raped all the time. There seems to be no empathy for the victims of crime. Now, you could say, well, it could have been an indigenous Briton that had committed those crimes. And I would say I have the same view, that whether it's a migrant who kills or murders or rapes or sexually abuses somebody, it doesn't matter. These people have both committed a crime and they should both be equally held to account. So why is the concern about migrants? Why in particular? Well, the evidence so far seems to be that the police have very little knowledge about these people, and that they seem to be featuring a lot on social media and in the news with regard to murder, like for example the Tommy Roberts murder, the murder of 3 people up in Nottingham by Mr. Callacane, who again I understand was an illegal migrant, and the patterns seem to be repeating themselves over and over again. We seem to have a group of people who are incentivised to come over to France by the government's policy of putting them up in hotels, providing them with food, succour, money, mobile phones, things that they don't give to poor people in our own country, almost as a privileged citizen. Now, the trouble with that is that if you incentivise people to come over from France, where allegedly they're fleeing persecution, although I would like to know what persecution they're suffering in France, because to the best of my knowledge, people from the UK take holidays in France. And, you know, if they're sufficiently confident to take their families over to France on holiday, why is it that people are choosing to escape France, Terry, allegedly as asylum seekers?
Terry, in your view, what percentage, this is a very broad and slightly nebulous question, but you may be able to shed some light on it. What percentage of the young men, mainly young men in these hotels, are from really refugee asylum seeker cases, and what percentage are maybe, as some people would say, opportunists or economic migrants? Many people feel that most of them are simply economic migrants or opportunists, for want of a better word.
Oh, I cannot say for certain because I'm not privy to that data. However, if you look at what I've just said and consider that in France you do not have a regime that is actively persecuting people, and in fact if you want to claim asylum in France, you can do so with all the rights afforded under the various international conventions. So I would argue from data, sorry, just trying to think of the word, from anecdotal data, from stuff that you hear from migrants filming themselves, etc., it's a pull factor of the standard of living that they'll get in the UK and the access to benefits, rather than necessarily being free of any particular danger that they're suffering in France.
And actually, if I might interrupt, Terry, a lot of people are not aware there are actually migrant hotels in some parts of France, not in the Calais region, because the ones that are in the Calais area, they're single-minded. They just want to get over here as quick as possible.
Yes, I'm well aware of that.
That's all they want. But a lot of people don't realise. I suspect you might already know this, Terry. But in some parts of France there are migrant hotels, and of course the French are having a terrible time with this as well. Although a lot of people tend to view the French as automatically are against us on this, as our enemies. But a lot of French people would support our protest here tonight and understand how we feel, and they're going through similar. But my question, this keeps coming back, on social media over and over again, and sometimes face to face. People have been saying to me, doing this outside migrant hotels is racist bullying. Doing these protests outside migrant hotels, instead of directing it at politicians, doing it outside migrant hotels is intimidating and bullying some of the world's most vulnerable and desperate people. So I personally don't agree with that, but what would you say to people who bring that point up to you, because it comes up again and again, doesn't it, Terry?
It's a difficult one, to be fair. As I said earlier, there will be people in the Britannia Hotel who, but for their illegality of coming to the UK, may, as individuals, be perfectly decent people. But we don't know. And this is a problem. If you're concerned about your families, then it's natural for people to see where the police are failing in their job to protect us. And if you're getting the same people, and when I say the same people, I'm not talking about the same individuals, but the same groups of people committing similar forms of crime over and over again, you can understand the motivation to do that. Now, my view is, on the one hand, there's some validity to what you said earlier, that it might be interpreted as race, and I really don't believe it is. I think mostly people are here because they don't want to have their families harmed in any way, and they see this as a group of undocumented people of whom we know nothing about, and whom the police know very little about, because if you've disposed of all your documentation and you're simply coming up with a line saying that you're suffered, there's no evidence that you have.
On last week's interview, Terry, a lady called Vivian, who's here again tonight selling the Gollywog badges, she said, and she mirrored my personal thoughts so well. She said, well, just because we've got scumbags of our own doesn't mean we should be importing more in from almost anonymously, randomly from elsewhere. And I thought, what a great way of putting it, in my opinion.
It is a good way of putting it. I remember back when I was a child, Robertson's Gollywog, and it wasn't a thing of race. People loved it. It was a nice thing. It was something that you were happy about. It wasn't. There was no nasty connotation about it. And I remember in the 90s, yes, there were some people who were motivated by race discrimination, but overwhelmingly, race wasn't an issue for most people, and that's changed since Tony Blair decided to rub people's face in diversity. It started becoming a political issue rather than a normal issue, because I've got friends of different shades of colour, and they're lovely people. I've got a friend who's Indian. Again, he's not white like me, but he's a lovely guy. I've got a friend who's a Filipina, and she's a lovely person.
I
too.
often say that people who I hate to use labels, but people that are more left-leaning or far left, I keep saying to them they need to check out the definition of racism, racist, check out the definition of fascist, and check out the definition of Nazi, because people are brandishing those words around now so irresponsibly, in my view, Terry.
I agree.
Unbelievable, brandishing them around. That's the way I would put it.
As it happens, this afternoon, before I came here, I had a Polish friend of mine come over, and we were talking about immigration in Poland, because it's something he's concerned about, particularly with regard to Ukrainians, because many people don't know this, but the Ukrainians, particularly the Ukrainian nationalists or banderists, were responsible for killing close on 250,000 Poles during World War II. And they provided 2 SS divisions, many of whom ended up going to Canada. And frankly, we're not being told about this. There's a big statue in Poland with a baby on a trident representing the loss that the Poles suffered at the hands of the Ukrainians. Now, Poland has taken in around about 3 to 4 million Ukrainians into their country, and it's the same sort of concern that a lot of people have in this country about people that they don't know and have had a potential bad experience from. It's also the case now in Poland that a lot of the Polish people on the border of Germany have set up their own patriotic border guard, because the Germans are getting rid of a lot of their worst undocumented migrants into Poland, where already they're committing rape and assault and even murder in Poland. So this isn't something that just affects Britain.
Terry, we've got a lady from Sky News Australia here, and I know Sky News Australia would normally have similar thinking to us, and it's such a privilege to have them here tonight. So I've just seen the lady walk past, but not name dropping or anything. Honestly,
I'm sure you're famous.
Terry, we need an hour together. We could do a really good.
Yeah, well, we could do that another time.
There's never enough time, is there? Maybe next week or the week after we can talk again, Terry. Thank you so much for your input, your thoughts. It's good to speak to somebody in a bit of depth behind the scenes, outside of the fray, who can, But I suppose, are we going to go back into the fray now?
Well, in a minute. I'll just leave this for your viewers.
Yes.
As with everything, there's nuance to all this.
Nuance, yes, nuance.
And it's not just black and white, right and wrong. You've got 2 groups of people who are very angry with each other because they don't really understand each other's point of view.
No.
And it may be deliberate. And I would say, with regard to this, I have family, I don't want my family to be hurt. And the question is, when you bring people who are undocumented into your country, you don't know who you're dealing with. And as I say, with the Tommy Roberts case, the police knew nothing until the murder had taken place. Then they did the Interpol check. Now, I would hope that for every undocumented migrant, as we no longer use Eurodac to identify the people coming in, they would do an Interpol check on every undocumented migrant in order to establish whether they represent a current risk to the population at large. If they did that, I think Border Force would be able to winnow out those people who represent a threat because they're known risks. That also means that a lot of the people here would possibly have a very different view to illegal migrants. But there's other issues as well. For example, the cost of this all. We've got veterans on our streets who are not being treated in any way the same way, even though they're actually British citizens. So in a sense, we are giving better treatment to people who self-declare asylum, whereas the evidence seems to follow that most of them are not. I'll leave you with this thought. A guy I know who's a security guard at a local shop, he's a Pakistani guy. He's come here legally. He's a nice guy. And I understood from what he told me, he used to be a security guard at the Ibis Hotel when they had migrants there. And he told me that these people are all scammers. Now, he's a Pakistani guy. I mean, I got on fine with him.
Yeah.
He's a lovely guy. But he said they're all scammers. He said many of them are doing delivery jobs, just eat jobs and all that sort of thing, which they're not allowed to do. That's committing a criminal offence under their current conditions. But nobody's talking about it.
No.
And for the socialists who are jumping up and down about migrants, why are they happy about people who are legally in this country taking jobs from the ordinary working man?
And the point I keep making, just slightly digressing, but Terry, is that we in our movement, at our protests, I often shock people when I say we've got legal migrants and immigrants.
They're
we've
very
got
angry.
quite a few legal, legitimate migrants and immigrants, and people from migrant and immigrant backgrounds that are joining our protests, and they are really, really sick of what I call chaos. Terry.
I can tell you this. Unfortunately, this week, my Polish friend, who's a migrant himself, but legal migrant, he was tempted to come along, but he couldn't make it because he got other commitments. And the week previously, a friend of mine, who's from a lovely family, really nice people, they're from India, from Kerala, in India, and he was going to come along. He worked 15 years in Saudi Arabia, and his experience in Saudi Arabia was that the Islamic people have a very different view in the world to non-Islamic people. And he was going to come along, even though he's an Indian, which shows that it's not a racial issue. It's an issue about safety.
Thank you so much, Terry. I should imagine people can hear some of the words being spoken, some of the chants. So let's go and investigate some more, shall we, Terry? Thank you so much. Speak to you again soon.
Been a pleasure, Jonathan.
All the best, Terry.
Cheers.